I am 78 years old, and I need to tell you this before anything else. The day I realized I was no longer strong was the day I couldn't get up from my own kitchen floor. It wasn't dramatic, no broken glass, no shouting for help. Just me, lying there, staring at the dust under the refrigerator, listening to my own breathing get heavier. I remember thinking how quiet the house was. Too quiet. I also remember thinking very clearly that if I stayed there long enough, no one would come. Not because no one cared, but because I had spent my whole life making sure no one needed to. That thought hurt more than my back. I wasn't always old, of course. Once, being independent felt like the best thing about me. I grew up believing that a man should handle his own problems. That was how I was raised. You didn't ask for help unless there was absolutely no other choice. You worked, you endured, and you stayed quiet about it. My father lived that way. He never complained. He went to work sick. He fixed things himself even when it took all night. When people talked about him after he died, they said he was strong and reliable. I wanted to be remembered the same way. So I learned early on how to say, "I'm fine," even when I wasn't. When I was younger, it worked. I had energy. I had pride in my hands, in my back, in my ability to carry weight without showing strain. I worked the same job for decades, rarely took days off, never liked calling in sick. I told myself that depending on others made people lazy. I told myself that asking for help was a sign you were falling behind. I married young. My wife knew me better than anyone, even when I didn't realize it. She used to offer help in small ways. She'd say she could carry something for me, or finish a task, or drive when I was tired. I almost always said no, not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't want to feel less capable. At first, she would smile and insist. Later, she stopped insisting. I didn't notice when that changed. I thought everything was fine. Our life together was quiet, simple, predictable. I woke early. Coffee, toast, newspaper, work. Come home. Dinner at the table. Television on low. Some evenings we talked, some evenings we didn't. I thought silence meant comfort. I didn't understand that silence can also mean distance. Years passed without any announcement. No clear moment where I could say, "This is when I started getting old." My body changed slowly. A little stiffness in the mornings. A little more time to catch my breath after carrying groceries. I adjusted without thinking about it. I avoided stairs when I could. I lifted things more carefully. I told myself this was normal. Everyone my age felt this way. Friends started retiring. Some moved away, some got sick, some didn't come back at all. I went to funerals and shook hands and drove home. Each time I felt lucky. I was still standing. I was still independent. That word mattered to me more than I understood. My wife changed too. She moved slower. She tired more easily. She asked me to come with her to appointments. I told her she'd be fine. When she suggested we ask our daughter to help with the yard, I said it wasn't necessary. I liked keeping things the way they were. I didn't want help changing that. The first time a doctor suggested extra support at home, I nodded politely and said I could manage. I believed it. Or maybe I needed to believe it. Taking care of things myself was how I proved I was still useful, still capable, still the man I thought I was supposed to be. When my wife's health worsened, I took on everything. Cooking, cleaning, driving, medications, appointments. I didn't tell anyone how tired I was. Friends offered to stop by. I said we were fine. Our daughter asked if I needed help. I said no. I told myself this was my responsibility. I told myself that asking for help meant I had failed her. It didn't feel heroic. It felt heavy. But I kept going. I slept less. My back hurt constantly. My hands shook when I was exhausted. I grew impatient over small things. I didn't like the person I was becoming. but I didn't know how to stop. Pride doesn't announce itself. It just keeps whispering that you can handle one more day on your own. One evening, my wife reached for my hand and told me I looked tired all the time. I said I was fine. I always said that. She didn't argue. She just looked at me for a long moment. I didn't understand that look then. I do now. After she passed, the house felt empty in a way I wasn't prepared for. People came by at first. They brought food. They offered help. I thanked them and said I was all right. When the visits stopped, the silence settled in. This time, it wasn't peaceful. It pressed down on me. I kept my routines because they were all I had left. Coffee, meals, television, days blended together. I talked to myself without realizing it. I avoided mirrors because I looked older than I felt, or maybe I felt older than I wanted to admit. And then came that morning in the kitchen. The fall itself wasn't loud. I slipped while lifting a heavy pot. I remember the sudden pain, the cold floor, and the thought that came right after it. I should have asked for help. That was the moment everything I believed about strength started to crack. When I finally called my daughter that morning, my voice shook more than I expected. I fell, I said. Just that. No details, no excuses, just the truth I had been avoiding for decades. She didn't scold me. She didn't lecture. She said she was on her way. And she came. She helped me move to a chair. She made tea, set it on the table, and just sat with me for a while. It felt strange, almost uncomfortable, to let someone take care of me. I was unused to it. It wasn't relief at first. It was a kind of vulnerability I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. But over the next few days, I began to notice the difference. She checked if I needed help with meals. She tidied the kitchen. She reminded me about appointments I had forgotten. It wasn't that she was doing too much. It was that I had been doing too much alone for too long. The weight I had carried for years, silently, was suddenly lighter because I let someone else carry a part of it. I thought I would feel embarrassed, maybe ashamed, but I didn't. I just felt human. Weak, yes, but human in the most ordinary, real way. I realized then how much of my life I had spent hiding my weaknesses, pretending that I could always manage, when in reality, I had been slowly breaking down. It didn't happen overnight, of course. Old habits die slowly. I found myself instinctively saying, I can do it myself, even when I didn't have the strength. My daughter would just smile, hand me the item, or insist on doing it for me. At first, I resisted in little ways, clinging to the last fragments of my pride. Then one morning, I caught myself smiling quietly as she lifted a heavy box I couldn't manage. And that was the first time I felt it. Accepting help wasn't weakness, it was relief. Over time, I allowed more small things. She would help with groceries. She would sit with me when I wanted company. She would make the bed when my back hurt too much. I realized something important. The help I had once refused wasn't a reflection of my failure. It was a reflection of love. People offer help not because you're incapable, but because they care. I started thinking about the years I had refused to lean on anyone, all the moments I insisted on carrying everything myself, the meals I cooked alone, the errands I ran while my body protested, the appointments I attended without telling anyone I was struggling, the quiet mornings where I stared at the coffee cup in my hand, knowing I was tired but unwilling to admit it. All those years I thought I was proving strength, but really I was proving stubbornness. And stubbornness is quiet. It doesn't scream, it doesn't demand attention, but it wears you down. The thing about prideful independence is that it doesn't just affect you, it affects the people around you too. I never saw the worry in my wife's eyes when she offered help. I never noticed the pause in my daughter's voice when she asked if I needed anything. I didn't see the small gestures of care that I had brushed aside for decades. Now I see them all clearly. and I feel a quiet regret, not for having lived, not for having been independent, but for having done it all alone for so long. I learned the hard way that life doesn't wait. People don't wait. Your body doesn't wait. I could have asked for help sooner. I could have accepted the small gestures my wife offered. I could have let my daughter in before I was lying on the kitchen floor. And maybe that's the quiet lesson I want to share. Asking for help isn't a failure. It isn't a sign that you're weak. It's a choice to let someone else carry a little of your burden so you don't have to do everything alone. I still struggle with it. Pride doesn't disappear just because you've learned a lesson. Sometimes I say, I'll manage, before thinking. Sometimes I want to prove I'm capable even when I'm tired. But then I remember that day on the kitchen floor. I remember how heavy the silence was. I remember how relieved I felt when my daughter arrived, how strange it was to admit I couldn't do it all. And I paused. I let someone else help. I wish I could go back and tell my younger self something simple. It's okay to let people in. It's okay to let someone else carry a part of the weight. It doesn't make you less. It makes you human. Time is quieter than we think. People don't always say what they mean twice. A small gesture, a call, a shared meal, a hand offered in support, they're worth more than pride or stubbornness. I wish I had understood that sooner. I don't want anyone else to spend decades learning the same way I did. If you're watching this and there's someone you've been meaning to call, maybe tonight is a good time. If there's someone who has offered help, maybe let them. You don't have to carry everything yourself. You can still be strong and still accept support. I've learned that the hard way. I know I won't forget that fall on the kitchen floor. Not the pain, not the fear, not the silence. But I won't forget the relief that came when I let someone else in. And I hope you won't wait as long as I did. If this story touched you or reminded you of someone you care about, share it with them. Comment below. Tell me your story. There's a quiet strength in sharing and listening. And if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe. Maybe together we can learn how to carry the weight a little lighter, one hand at a time.